Hello, everybody. How are we doing? Thank you ever so much for turning up. Skipping ahead. Thanks ever so much for coming today. Don't know why this is happening. Technical issues. Okay, we've got off the mouse. Thanks ever so much, everyone, for turning up and sacrificing your an hour on your busy Wednesday. Really appreciate it. Really excited about this one. This is something that I don't think is being spoken about enough in terms of the industry. Why is this going on? I don't know why this is moving on as it is. Yeah, this is a really hot topic for us in terms of, I don't think this has been spoken about by SEOs enough and digital marketing in general. Sorry, we're just getting some slides just moving on their own. I have no idea why. I guess it wants me to be on this slide, so we'll just start from here. So no, it's a really hot topic, and this is kind of the why this is a hot topic. So accessibility is often quite an overlooked topic from where we're sitting, and the scale of catering to people with accessibility needs beyond kind of or catering to people with special accessibility needs is really, really big. You know, in terms of these numbers here, over 135 million people in Europe have some form of disability. Narrowing it down to just visual impairment, that's like 30 million, and 50 million with learning difficulties. And even, you know, reframing what accessibility means, you know, language is certainly something I hadn't considered, but again, it's a really key factor. And making sure that we're kind of covering this stuff off as marketers and digital practitioners has tangible business impacts. You know, it's fundamentally the right thing to do, but yeah, beyond that, it just has fantastic commercial benefits. So, you know, expanding the ability to reach potential customers or, you know, cater to your existing customers. The spending power these people bring is huge. And not only that, but obviously it's fantastic for brand reputation, make sure that you have an inclusive brand. And ultimately, you know, as a business owner myself, is like I know that if I can increase my ability to sell to people without increasing my costs, it's pure profit at the end of the day. And again, that's sort of one of the great benefits of doing this. So why are we talking about this? Why have we kind of teamed up with ReciteMe to talk about this? Fundamentally, you know, the way we see organic digital marketing, you know, come from an SEO background, the way we see organic, it really sits at the intersection of brand and performance marketing, and accessibility very much does as well. It's very similar in that regard. So, you know, like I said a moment ago, brand reputation, you know, if we're making sure that we're inclusive, it's really good for that. If we're not inclusive as brands, then again, it's quite detrimental. And then from a performance standpoint, when you get to hard numbers, if you're ignoring kind of catering to accessibility, you're kind of leaving a lot of money on the table. And the core of our holistic approach is that we sit across all of the aspects of organic, from technical SEO to content and UX. And we're very much already in the workflows of things that kind of cater to accessibility and make sure websites do work for everybody. So that's kind of why we feel it's a natural fit. And we're delighted today to be joined by Avneet from ReciteMe, and we kind of set up a partnership with ReciteMe, and there's a really natural fit in terms of, you know, Built Visible are you know, an industry-leading organic agency, and ReciteMe are an industry-leading tooling provider with kind of an innovative set of tools that help cater to accessibility requirements. So we're really excited about this one. It's something a little bit different from the day-to-day, but it's kind of really pressing, and we're going to go into why that is. And Avneet's going to sort of talk us through that in a moment. So the shape of the session in general, we're going to go into accessibility itself, the European Accessibility Act, and Avneet's going to talk through that with us and give us the lowdown there. And then we're going to talk about what the competitive advantages actually are. So hard bottom line, what does this look like? How that fits in with SEO. So how can we integrate this with some of the workflows we already have in place? And then crucially, what are the next steps? What does this look like? There is a deadline that you'll all be aware of if you signed up for the webinar of June. So what is it we need to be doing right now? And then at the end, we've got time, hopefully, for a bit of Q&A, and you know, we'll try and keep ourselves honest on the time that we have available, although there's a meaty topic, so we might have to kind of get through it nice and quickly. So I'll be done in a moment, probably sick of my voice already, but just by way of introduction, so I'm really delighted to be joined, as I said, by Avneet today from ReciteMe. She's an accessibility specialist, and we've had a great kind of, great process pulling all this together. And then I'm also joined with two of our experts from our team on our content strategy and UX team, Abby and Miranda, who will be guiding through the rest of the webinar. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Avni to give us a bit of a primer on accessibility, and give us an introduction to the European Accessibility Act.
Thank you, Jeff. So firstly, I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into what is the definition of accessibility. So accessibility can be seen as a dictionary definition, which means creating something that is accessible to the end user, which also means that the end user should be able to perceive and understand your information in the most easy way possible. And when I say accessibility, it means that you're delivering digital services that are accessible, you're delivering documentation that's also accessible to the end user, and also making sure, more specifically, that people can perceive your information and interact with the web in the most easy manner. And if we move on. So why build an inclusive and accessible website? And obviously, number one, it's the right thing to do. You need to make sure that you've given everybody the opportunity to access your content in the most easiest and accessible way. Secondly, it's the smart business practice. Obviously, if you're delivering something that's accessible, you're inviting more users to your site and you're increasing user traffic and you're catering to the needs of accessible users. And thirdly, obviously, what we're talking about today is it's required by law, which is the EAA Act, and you need to make sure any content that you deliver is accessible by law as well. So if we move on, yes. So what is the EAA 2025? So European Accessibility Act comes into picture June next year, and it's ideally going to ensure that any of the digital services that you're providing are delivered in the most accessible and inclusive way for the end user. Obviously, this is going to apply across to your products, your services, your websites, and it's going to make sure that your accessibility standards are harmonized across the European. And what largely you're trying to do here is remove digital barriers for your end user, and we're catering to everybody's needs at the end of the day. Also, what that's going to do is obviously boost your inclusivity in the EU markets. And again, like I mentioned before, it's going to be legal requirement for businesses as well as services to be of accessible nature. So now you may question, what are the steps to become EAA compliant? Obviously, the first and foremost is you need to make sure that you're enhancing your user experience. So again, you're giving the user the most accessible and inclusive way in terms of your digital services. You're allowing them to control and make their user experience more personalized when they visit your website. Secondly, your website should be of compliant nature. When I say that, I mean that any major accessibility issue should be fixed. Your website should be accessible by a screen reader. And thirdly, you need to also work towards your accessibility roadmap. And I always like to say accessibility is a journey. We can't fix everything at once. You need to sort of add steps into your quarterly basis, also work with your development team to make sure what issues you can prioritize and what issues you can work with first. And also when we talk about accessibility roadmap, you need to consider building your accessibility statement, which also forms a crucial part of the EAA regulation. Your accessibility statement should be placed on your website saying what your current compliancy level is towards EAA. And lastly, you need to have a remediation plan in place. Obviously, like I've been saying, it's a work in progress accessibility. So you need to make sure you're taking small iterative steps to be on that journey to be accessible for your large pool of users. So what's the risk, obviously, of being non-compliant? The first one is legal penalties. Obviously, the act's coming up in June 2025, and you're going to have legal implications if you're not going to be compliant towards that. Secondly, there's a huge brand reputation damage. Obviously, when we're trying to deliver a service, we need to make sure that we're catering to everybody's needs and not just certain users. So again, if you're not delivering accessible services, you're not accounting for them users. And also consumer and employee dissatisfaction, again, because you're not going to be catering to a certain pool of users, you're going to be, they're going to be missing out and they won't be able to use your services in the most accessible form. So obviously next, when we talk about EAA, it largely like the foundations lay on WCAG. WCAG is your Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. So to meet EAA, you need to be doing two things, which is to be WCAG compliant to 2.2 AA and publish an accessibility statement. Now, when I say WCAG 2.2 AA, this is the current compliancy level that you should be meeting. And WCAG in itself has 3 levels, which is your single A, AA, and AAA. And to be EAA compliant, you need to be, which is your industry standard, you need to be meeting AA compliancy. And to meet AA compliancy, you need to also make sure that you're meeting single A. So it can't be that you just meet all the criterion in AA and you've missed something in single A. So to meet AA, you have to meet both. So that would be a total of 80 success criteria. Once you've met all of those, then you would be obviously meeting your EAA compliancy. And just to sort of simplify it a little bit further, so single A is the things that you must do in order to, it's basically your basic level of guidance and compliancy around accessibility. AA is the things that you should be doing at industry standard to sort of incorporate accessibility in your digital services. And AAA, it's just the enhancements that you could do, or the stuff that you would want to do probably further down your roadmap once you've become EAA compliant. I'll pass to Abby now.
Thanks, Avni. So now we've gone over the legal and the technical requirements when it comes to accessibility. I want to talk to you about how it can be a competitive advantage. And so I really like this quote from Paul Smith. He's a director of digital accessibility at Barclays. It's worth calling out Barclays and financial institutions here, as the accessibility guidelines do particularly call out financial institutions and banking services. These are, of course, services that everyone needs to be able to access, and so there may be particular scrutiny on those particular institutions. But Paul Smith here, he says that accessibility programs at Barclays have been some of the biggest loyalty schemes they've got. And this is because people who have accessibility needs in their family, not just them, but their family members and friends, they actually use their feet to vote for the bank that they kind of want to support when it comes to that. And so he says that it makes good business sense. It's not a charity reason. These people are advocates and bring other customers with them when you do accessibility well. And as Jeff mentioned before, the spending power for people, as they're known to as the purple pound, is quite significantly huge. In Europe, it's billions. But in the UK alone, as I know many people here are from the UK, it's £274 billion per year approximately to the UK economy. So there's just a huge chunk of revenue and income that could be generated from catering to people with accessibility needs. And I wanted to just note that in particular disabled users, they will abandon your site if you don't kind of meet their needs. So this study from ClickAway Pound found that 69% of disabled users will leave a site with accessibility barriers, and actually 83% limit their online spending to sites they know they're accessible. So not only abandon your site, but they'll kind of not even go onto your site if you're not concerned with accessibility needs. And it's not just people with accessibility needs. As I mentioned before, it's those with family members, friends, but actually, influential audiences. 94% of Gen Zs say they would buy from a company that has an excellent CSR program. So people that are doing corporate responsibility really well, and 84% would kind of give that company a benefit of the doubt in a crisis. So, they'll kind of forgive you if you're doing things like accessibility well. They'll forgive you when you do have any PR crisis. And so whilst accessibility is good for revenue and expanding your customer base and revenue potential, it really does help boost transaction efficiency and the overall customer journey. So if you pay attention to accessibility, it can simplify navigation, the checkout process, reducing drop-offs, cart abandons, and it just really makes the whole transaction smoother for all users, not just those with accessibility needs. And here I just really want to highlight that it's not just users with permanent accessibility needs that we need to be caring about. These are, of course, people with visual impairments, audio impairments, limited dexterity, and also cognitive disabilities. So those unseen accessibility needs, such as dyslexia, ADHD, or autism. Accessibility can also mean that it's varied by context. So in things like temporary conditions, so these might be that you have an injury, a medical condition, you're recovering from surgery, or even things like migraines or flu mean that you might not be able to see as well, you might not be able to hear as well. And so that brings a whole other bunch of users into consideration when we're talking about accessibility. And lastly, which I think is really important here, is situational. So everyone at any point could have accessibility needs. It could be that you're in bright sunlight, and so the glare is affecting screen readability. You're in a noisy environment. You might just be in a shared public space like a library where you need captions to view a video. And I think this is really important because if you don't consider accessibility, then you kind of are pushing out large numbers of audiences based on the situation they're in. And so it really is everyone's concern, and particularly for those of us who are in product design or kind of web design, we really want to be prioritizing this as it impacts every single one of our users. Cool, so next I want to talk about SEO and accessibility, and I think this is a really good example of situational accessibility needs. So users, when they're searching, also have accessibility needs, and this is because search engine crawlers tend to act like blind users, and this is because in many ways an SEO crawler, search engine crawler, kind of shares the same principles in their needs as accessibility users. So things like using alt text, semantic HTML, and structured content, these all make content much clearer for search engines and accessible to all users. And I'm going to talk to you about the key elements that are shared across both accessibility and SEO. So in particular, alt text, so describing images in a meaningful way. This is really how search engine crawlers are able to understand the context of an image, and it's the way that someone uses a screen reader is able to understand the context of an image. I see alt text used all the time as kind of template copy or simply image of person, and this really isn't useful because if you're using a screen reader and you have visual impairment, you're not getting the full experience of what's on show, and you're not conveying meaning to these users, and therefore you're kind of leaving significant ways of communicating with them off the table. Semantic HTML, so here I mean the use of proper tags such as heading structures to structure content. Again, I see this all the time where people will use perhaps a H2 to not be a H2. So here we want heading tags to be properly structured, starting from H1 to H2 to H3 in terms of the importance of content. This is again important for people that use screen readers because it means they're able to navigate through the content and understand what are the key things and the most important things on the page and what are the lesser important things. Likewise, search engine crawlers do exactly the same. If something's a H1, they see that as the most important thing on the page. And if something is a H6, then it's less important and therefore something that they don't need to prioritize when they're trying to kind of understand the context of your site to then rank it in the search engine results pages. Structured content, again, very similarly to those tags. Logical layout, it benefits both search engine users and anyone with accessibility needs. Descriptive links, so here anchor text. Anchor text, again, is used by kind of visually impaired people using screen readers to understand where they're going. So if you just put, click here or buy here, things like that, that's not really indicating exactly where that person will land when they click that site. And likewise for crawlers, again, link kind of click here or go here, those sorts of CTA button text is kind of useless for them to understand that how topics are linked together to then be able to crawl correctly. Mobile responsiveness is really important in the world of SEO. We often get told that everything should be made mobile first, and that's very much how Google in particular ranks and kind of prioritizes content in terms of how well it is able to adapt to mobile and different screen sizes. And of course, if you're using various different readers or screen sizes, then that's equally important for you. And transcripts. So again, kind of like alt text, when we transcribe videos, it means that crawlers are able to understand the context of the video, and likewise, users with visual impairment are too. So there's some key elements that kind of cross over from both, and it really does go to show that SEO and accessibility really do go hand in hand. Not through the things that I've just mentioned, but there's a belief in shared optimization principles, a real drive to improve user experience, and ultimately maximize the reach and impact of any content. And so doing both at the same time really benefits everyone and allows content to be both discoverable and usable for everyone, regardless of their abilities. So I'm going to now talk to you about a case study, and this is Lego Braille Bricks, and this is really digital accessibility in action. And so Lego Braille Bricks is a really great product, and it's designed to help children who are blind or visually impaired learn Braille through play. So obviously this promotes inclusivity in education, but it really strengthens Lego's position as a socially responsible brand. Importantly, it was developed with an authoritative expert here, the blind associations globally. So it wasn't just Lego going out and deciding they're going to do this initiative. They had this expertise and kind of recognized institutions to help them. And importantly, they had this free distribution to schools and institutions in 20+ countries. So it wasn't just kind of something that was commercially there, although it does definitely help. It was really a kind of initiative to do good and show Lego doing good in the world. So here are some of the things that online Lego did to proactively meet legal requirements and ultimately, I think, future-proof their digital presence. So as Avneet said before, you need to publish an accessibility statement. And so they've done that, as you can see on the right. And then what I really like about this is they've also said, what we're doing to improve accessibility and what we're preparing to do for the upcoming kind of accessibility acts, as well as admitting that not all of their content is accessible. And I think that is important to be aware of. You can't do everything, but as Avneet said, we're on a journey. So things they've done is, screen reader capability is obviously for visually impaired people a real important aspect of this. Keyboard navigation again, and just going back to that real structured content, it's really descriptive when it comes to alt text for images, and overall structure and layout of the site is developed in a way that helps people navigate very easily through keyboards, or in fact, if you're a search engine crawler, navigate as easy as well. So alongside just having the product itself, they publish loads of activities on the website. And this kind of harks back to the idea of accessibility working both for SEO and for accessible users. And so this helped the Lego Braille Bricks reach new audiences, and as well as keeping any existing customers engaged. And the Activity Hub is now ranking in search engines for terms like Braille activities. So it's putting their product and their activities in front of the right audiences at the right time. Alongside the product launch, they had a bunch of really favourable press coverage, and this got them mentions and links from very highly authoritative domains such as Wired, Time, where they got mentioned as one of the best inventions of 2023, and then Lego Braille Bricks were mentioned in BBC News here, with a lovely article on Lego Braille Bricks let me play with my grandkids. So not only are they kind of showing trust and building trust in these really highly authoritative publications, but they're also getting links back from these highly authoritative publications to the site. So if you know about SEO and you come here today, then links back to your site really establish your SEO presence and enable you to kind of move up in the search engine results pages as a result. Again, what we're seeing more and more in the SEO world is Reddit appearing in search engine results pages. And anyone who's on Reddit and into Lego will know that Lego's Reddit thread is highly active and engaged with space, the community of 1.9 million members, so it's absolutely huge. So any product launch here is really sure to ignite meaningful conversations. And as a result, we often see people asking questions in Reddit threads, and then those answers will appear in search engine results pages. So it just goes to say that, if you've got an engaged community and you are talking about things like accessibility on Reddit and kind of very much participating in those conversations, those can also help boost your search engine performance. So I hope in this example with Lego, I've proven that kind of doing accessibility the right way, not only with a product launch, but kind of doing accessible things online, really does pay off. However, this is very much the minority, and the overwhelming majority are inaccessible. And here 96.3%, I think as of last year, of homepages failed accessibility standards. So it's really a question of, can you afford to be one of them? And we really kind of realised that we couldn't afford to be one of them. We are on a learning curve here with accessibility. Every day we're trying to improve the way we do things, and partnering with ReciteMe highlighted some of those issues. And Miranda's going to talk to you about what we're doing to become more accessible.
Yeah, thanks for that, Abby. So yeah, kind of as Abby has said, we decided it was sort of time to practice what we're preaching. And we reached out to ReciteMe for an audit of our own homepage. So as you can see from the screenshot, ReciteMe's audit is based on WCAG standards, and there are some changes to be made, definitely. But now that we have these findings, we can now create that actionable list of changes and our own accessibility roadmap to really hit the ground running and especially prepare for next year. So what kinds of changes are we going to make? I've included a few on this slide to give you an indication of the fact that accessibility is really sort of a multi-team discipline as well. It's easy to think of things as just for devs, just code changes, but your SEO teams, your content teams all need to be involved. So to break down some really actionable changes that we're going to start to make now is things like adding ARIA labels to our HTML. So these are really key for visually impaired users and those using screen readers. They act a bit like alt text, and they describe what elements are. So if you have buttons, for example, the social media buttons on our website flagged as an issue here, adding the ARIA labels helps translate what these are to those who won't necessarily be able to see the content. Another change we'll be making is form controls. This is another HTML change, and this is to make sure that our website is navigatable using a keyboard. So again, this has been brought up a lot. It's a very easy accessibility fix that often gets disregarded. And those two are kind of more technical changes. This third one is, I would say, a more content-based change, and it's the anchor text issue that Abby's mentioned. So not only is having good anchor text key for Google's quality guidelines, but according to WCAG standards, users should never have to guess where a link may take them. So this is something our content team is going to look at all of the anchor text issues that have flagged and come up with more clear descriptive link text that we can use. But aside from all of these kind of practical tips that I've sort of whistle-stopped through, what can you do about it today? It's all well and good us kind of building the case for you, but you guys have got to go away and convince everyone your side. And I wanted to make the point that it doesn't have to be this sort of new business pitch to your internal stakeholders. The great thing about web accessibility is you can really easily build it into larger plans you have for next year. So I've broken down some here. For example, migrations. If you're already making big changes to your website, it's the perfect time to make sure you're adding in those accessibility considerations and getting your developers briefed in, making sure you have your tickets set up. Similarly, template and design changes. If you're going through a rebrand, WCAG has loads of layout recommendations, especially along things like content structuring. So it's a great time to implement those. SEO projects, as Abby's just spoken about, accessibility and SEO go hand in hand. So, bake these into existing tech health checks and audits. And with your content as well, if you're doing consolidations, tone of voice, just a general tidy up, again, it's a great time to add in those accessibility measures. And kind of a final note on this is also, you don't have to go it alone. I think a really key thing for adding this into your financial year plans for 2025 is to get that expert consultation. So I'm going to pass back to Avneet now, actually, who's going to talk a little bit more about how you can get that from Recite Me and us.
Thank you, Miranda. Let's talk about how we can implement this. So the key steps are plan, scan, fix, and maintain. So obviously you need to plan in and identify the scope of your accessibility testing, so you can sort of know what are the key areas that you need to tackle first. Once you've decided that, you need to obviously scan your site. So like we've scanned there. So it's going to mention like all of the top fixes as per A, AA, and AAA, and against your WCAG 2.2 success criteria. The third step is obviously you need to go in and make them fixes. And like I said before, you can't fix everything at once. You can take a top level approach. So that could be your top fixes. Like we spoke about anchor tags before, we spoke about captions, alt tags. These can be fixed first as priority before you move on to more obviously low priority issues. And then the last one is maintain. So once you've made the fixes, every time you're uploading new content, every time you're publishing a new document, you need to make sure that you're running it through thorough accessibility tests to make sure anything that you publish is of accessible nature. And again, this maintenance can be done by the likeness of your roadmap, so that it's already built into your system to do accessibility testing on a timely manner. And how can we help? So how at Recite Me, we can help you in 3 phases. So obviously we provide front-end user experience, back-end accessible build, and consultancy services. So what are the front-end user experience? So that is our assistive toolbar. Once you have the assistive toolbar on your site, it will allow the end user to have a personalized experience of your site or of your digital web service. So obviously you can change the contrast on your web page, and that is crucial for certain users. If you have low visual impairment, you can change the foreground and background color to adjust to your likeness. You can change the heading structure, you can change the font size, you can use a magnification. And that's a little bit about the toolbar. So the second component is the accessibility checker. So what you could do with the checker is obviously run a scan of your site, like we've shown you that how Built Visible have done there. So what would that would do is show you all of the top fails that you've got on your site and how you need to fix them. And then the last one is our consultancy service. So obviously that's phrased around our people, process, and purpose. So we can help you and take you on a step-by-step journey on how you can meet EAA by June 2025. I'll explain a little bit more about the toolbar as well in a little bit more detail. So obviously, like I was saying, you've got key features of the toolbar, which are changing your font, your contrast. We've got the text reader, which again helps the end user to sort of convert certain text into audio form. You've got our cursor customization. So all in all, the toolbar gives the user an enhanced accessible and inclusive end experience, which is our key goal here, and ideally removing any digital barriers that they may be facing. Just let's talk a little bit about the checker as well. So obviously the checker, like I was mentioning before, it's more phrased around your compliancy levels. So you can make all your single A fixes, you can make your double A fixes, and then that will sort of take you on the WCAG 2.AA compliancy, which we're aiming for. And then lastly, the consultancy. And the consultancy side of things, it's a bit more one-to-one service from our end. So we'll help you develop that roadmap. For example, if you're aiming to be compliant with the EAA regulation by June next year, we can help you build a roadmap on how you can be on that journey and how you can be compliant. We'll help you with policy management, so i.e. writing up of accessibility statements. And the other thing that we can help you with is training and development. So if any of your team members require workshop on accessibility, we can help you on that end as well. And so obviously now you may ask where to start. So the key steps that you can take on this journey is obviously deploy the assistive toolbar. What that would do is give your end user the personalized experience, start working or running automated scans of your website to understand what are the key failures on your particular domain, and then how you can sort of work on them with a particular roadmap, and obviously benchmark the WCAG conformance level that you're working towards. For example, for the EAA, it's AA compliancy, and also assess and prioritize the key issues that you want to tackle first. And you can also delegate accessibility champions from each individual team. So you can have an accessibility champion from the design team, from the development team, and obviously you can have a product owner. So everybody working together for the end goal, which is to be compliant for our end user. Now I'll pass back to Jeff.
Cool, thank you, Abby, Miranda, and Avni. I just thought, yeah, really interesting stuff. Just want to sort of get our 3 key takeaways, and then we've got a little something at the end as well to kind of start getting going on this journey. So I think number 1, like what stands out for me is getting this right just makes sense on every level, right? So the commercial side of me is like, it's going to make more money without having to do too much at all, and it expands all the way through to it's just fundamentally the right thing to do, and we want to come to work and feel good about our jobs, right? So yeah, from my side of things, getting it right just makes sense on every level. Secondly, June 2025 is coming in fast. So like the interesting thing here is typically we work in a world where we're trying to help clients understand what growth potential looks like and help them achieve it. And it's kind of there's no specific end of that with SEO, everything's sort of ongoing. Whereas with this, something is there's a timeline to it and it's legislated for. So it's quite a different challenge. I look at June 2025 and some parts of me thinks that feels very far away, but the side of me that kind of works in digital says actually that's coming really, really quickly. So yeah, in terms of this, if this isn't on the radar, then how can we get it on the radar with our brands and make sure that we're implementing as quickly as possible? And then thirdly, getting going is kind of easy. Having just gone through like the accessibility toolbar from ReciteMe is kind of the plug and play over the top of the back end, whereas obviously you can go in the back end with the accessibility checker and start actually working on it. But either way, it's really, really easy to start on that journey. So we wanted to come together with ReciteMe to offer something on this basis. We kind of worked together to build a quick start audit. The idea of this is it's the combined power of ReciteMe's insights that kind of highlight very, very quickly what's required to get to AA compliance, combined with Built Visible and our ability to implement. So in terms of with our existing clients, how do we plug in some of these requests that will fit very naturally into other SEO workflows? And with people we don't yet work with, just making sure that we are there for that implementation support to really get immediate momentum on all of this. So a big part of this, as Abby was saying, is the journey of becoming compliant. It's about doing things, implementing them, playing that back into the business and getting momentum and keeping going. And a quick start guide does this without the need for like a long-term commitment to getting going, and helps you sort of really build internal momentum. So if you're interested in this, feel free to drop me a line. I'll put my details at the end of the deck. But what we wanted to do in the meantime is open it up for a little bit of Q&A if anyone has anything they want to discuss while we've got the experts in the room. There is a Q&A box if anyone wishes to ask any questions in that. Probably important information.
Naomi. So Naomi has said, what are the legal implications if changes aren't made by June 2025? So Avni, do you want to take that one, or I don't mind answering a bit?
Yeah, I can as well. So thank you for your questions. Basically, obviously, you've got to show that you're on that journey until June 2025. But what you would have to mention on your accessibility statement is this is the current compliancy level of your, obviously, the website that you're testing. So currently it might be partially compliant. But what I would suggest is you would need to mention in the disproportionate burden, mentioning what currently doesn't work for your site, just so that you're covering the legal implications, mentioning that you're currently on this pathway. Obviously, because of such and such dependency, you can't currently make them fixes, but obviously you will be in the near future. So you've got to make that clear on your accessibility statement.
Does that answer your question as well, Adrian, in terms of how your compliance against the AA standard? So yeah, I think it's just being clear about the journey and making it absolutely clear about what you haven't been able to do and what you are going to do to meet those AA standards. Any other questions? Joe has asked, are there any online checkers that we as a small business can use to check our current standard ahead of talking to our development agency? Yes, recite these. There are some other like smaller ones from RCAG, and we can kind of follow up with those, but they are very basic and not as comprehensive as something like Recite Me. And they've been working on this tool for many, many years. But there are some really quick tips, some kind of basic things like color contrast. Color contrast is really important for anyone with visual impairment, and also people with kind of neurodivergence. It can be an issue too. And there's some really quick and easy tools if you just search for kind of contrast checkers, and they'll show you very quickly what is a fail and what's a pass to the A, AA and AAA standards. Hopefully that helps, Joe. David asked, what is the scope of the EAA 2025 standards for smaller websites? So in terms of, do you mean, does it differ for smaller websites opposed to bigger websites? I'm not sure if that was what you meant. Basically it doesn't. I think you're probably more likely, if you're a very big brand and well known, more likely to come under scrutiny, and people are probably more likely to report you through the various means. However, yeah, if you're a smaller brand, there may be more of a personal connection. So if you do have a customer or a user who is has accessibility needs, then that might be, they might more inclined to be affected by it. But yeah, the kind of, it applies to anyone who has a product or service within the EU. So even if you don't have offices in the EU, but you sell a product or service to the EU, then you come under the legislation. Any other? David, I hope that answered your question. But yeah, you can always follow up with me after if it didn't.
Cool. If there are no further questions, thanks ever so much, everybody, for attending. As we said, if questions do pop up and you want to sort of discuss, absolutely feel free to get in touch with myself, Avneet, Abby, or Miranda. Really happy to talk to you. Like I said, we've built this little sort of product offering to get going really, really quickly and get this stuff, get real momentum on it. So again, if you want to discuss that, do let us know. And in the meantime, thanks ever so much for coming. Like I say, really appreciate your time on a busy Wednesday, no doubt. And yeah, good luck, everybody, getting compliant ahead of June 2025. And do feel free to reach out if you need anything or if we can help at all. Thanks ever so much. We'll pop an email round for those that haven't attended and those that have, with all of this information as well. So don't worry, that'll be coming to inboxes in the next week or so. Thanks ever so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.